A beautiful Chinese pangolin habitat doesn't need more than a little stream, a few rocks, a little bit of fallen trees and logs for the pangolins to climb on, and a beautiful indoor area for these little creatures when it's too cold during the winter time. Welcome back to my channel, and in today's episode I'm going to show you how to build this beautiful and stunning Chinese pangolin habitat. So stay tuned and let's get started. As you can maybe tell, we are continuing with our little tropical house, and the second resident of this is the Chinese pangolin. Right next to them are the tapirs and capybaras, and their little water feature is going to fuel the little water stream and their pangolin water section that we have. So they are kind of incorporated with one another, and I really had this vision right at the beginning. So as you might have seen my tapir and capybara habitat, you've seen that I've already built this little like fence in the rock wall so that the water can actually flow through and go into the little stream from the pangolins, and it leads into a little pond in their habitat, and there it can be like get taken out and maybe recycled and cleaned. As you can see in the background, I have already mapped out the layout of the habitat, so where I want the little water feature and stream to go. And then for the barriers, I wanted to have a little bit different from what we've did with the tapir and capybaras. Also, we need to keep in mind that the pangolin can actually climb, although they don't do this in game, which is a little bit sad, but they can actually climb. There's two different species of pangolins, and the Chinese pangolin that we have in the game is more of a little bit more ground dwelling pangolin creature or species, but they do climb a little bit. So you need to keep that in mind to also have a little bit of climbing features for the habitat, and that the barriers are actually climb proof. So that's why I decided to take these stone walls, and they are also relatively high so they cannot climb out. And then there's also a different pangolin species that is more of a tree dwelling species, but we don't have this in the game. So what this also means is that they need some climbing enrichment. So I kept in mind, I didn't like overdo it and did something for like same with like monkeys or like with my bear, so they don't have like a huge climbing frame, but they will get a few little trees where they can climb on a little bit, just because they are more of the ground dwelling species. Also, what you've just seen me doing with the stairs for the pathing, if you don't know this little trick, if you place down the pathing and want to do stairs, there's just one specific length. So the smallest one is 1 meter. So if you don't want to have this much of stairs or just want a little bit, you can just place down the path, take like any building, it doesn't really matter, it just needs to be a building that connects to the pathing, and then you can put it into the place where you want the path to continue and raise it up a little bit till it creates the stairs, and then you can decide exactly how big or how long you want the stairs to be. So that way you can create this little bit more smaller and not that many steps as you would create by just placing down the path in an incline. And since we have stairs in the front or right next to the barrier, obviously people with wheelchairs cannot get up those stairs. So I made this little like path that's going around a little planter that I will later do with like a less of a steep incline, so that people with wheelchairs can also get up there. Unfortunately, they can't really then see the pangolins from this little platform, but they can still see them from the first little window that we have, and then like at the very end of the stairs they can still look over it or over the little wall. So I try to keep these things in mind. Since I'm doing realistic zoos, and in realistic zoos they are normally most of the time like wheelchair friendly, so I try to keep that in mind. And I've seen this a lot in like a different zoo where there was like stairs or really steep incline, that they did like a different path that's going a little bit more around and it's more elongated so that the incline is not as steep. So I did that, and I just created a little planter in the middle in this little like gap to fill in the space. For the little water feature and this little stream, I wanted to have like a really shallow little stream so that the water will flow in there and that's not so deep that the pangolins need to like swim in there. It's just like really where they can just walk through it. And I saw this in a picture, in an inspirational picture where they had this little stream in the habitat, and I definitely needed to recreate that. So I used the actual like waterfall formation or something that we have. I used one of the smaller pieces in the front where the water would flow out, and then I used the longer piece to have this little like ramp. I tried to keep it not super steep, so that the water would not flow with like rapid speed, since we don't want to have like a lot of turbulence in the water, but still the water's gonna flow down and then through this little like tiny little river that we have and then into the pond, and there can get filtered out. And for the edge of this little stream, I wanted to make it as like realistic or naturalistic as possible. So I used these little rocks and put them into like a little bit of an incline. I'm using the word incline a lot today actually. And then I wanted to create like a small little like riverbed. I hope you like the way I did this, so definitely let me know what you think about this little stream that I did. And then of course I also kept in mind to make the water look a little bit dirtier, since the water from the capybara and tapir habitat is also like this little like greenish dirty algae water. It's also gonna be a little bit greenish with the pangolin water then. And then of course I hid the waterfall like rock part of it because it looks pretty unnaturalistic, so I just hit that with the natural like tropical rock that we have. And then I'm gonna continue with these little rock piles. I have my own like little bigger pile that I use over and over again, and then I'm using the little pebble piles made from Caesar. Also, all the blueprints that I used in this habitat are linked down in the description. So I only used like the habitat essentials from Caesar with the trees and the little pebble piles. And then I also use one of a plant blueprint. I don't remember the creator's name right now, but it's linked down in the description. It's like a set of a variety of different grasses. I've seen this using like by Caesar, for example, and I really like them, and I thought why not give it a shot and actually try them in my habitat. And I used like one or two of the plants, and they are really pretty, like relatively easy but still like looking really fine, and it just gives like a little bit of a different look in your habitat and just to have a bit more variety with your plants. If you didn't know yet, I really enjoy making small habitats for really tiny animals like the Chinese pangolin or the Kirkstickdick and meerkats and stuff like that, because I feel like with smaller habitats you have to be really careful with your details, and you can put in so many like small intricate details, and I often struggle by making big habitats for like elephants and rhinos because they are so huge and they need a lot of space for their traversable area. And then you also have this big blank space with their ginormous habitat that you kind of need to fill and make it look pretty. And with smaller habitats, I feel like you are so quickly with doing all the different things to make it look pretty and naturalistic, and you can just put in so much love and so many small details in there, and just so many more thoughts than with like big blank space. So I really like doing smaller habitats, and I often struggle with the big ones. So that's why I especially love this habitat. I have to say that this is like probably one of my new favorites, I would say, especially with the indoor area that you're gonna see a little bit later in this video. I just love the way it came out. It just looks pretty perfect for my opinion. There's just so much going on in there, but you can still see the small little animals, and I feel like this would be such a great habitat for the pangolins, like in also real life. So I'm just absolutely in love with this habitat. Sometimes you just have to admit with yourself that you did something good and to just feel good with yourself. And also with smaller habitats or with smaller animals, I feel like finding really nice inspirational pictures is so much easier. Probably because like big habitats for like elephants are often in real life relatively bare. They are often just like sandy or just grass, a lot with like ungulates. I see it in the zoos that I visited. They are really blank. There's just like a couple of trees, then like a feeder, maybe a tiny bit of enrichment, maybe like one big log somewhere in the middle, and that's basically it. And with small habitats, it's just so much more variety there, like because you have to like cram so many small things into one little space. It just looks super nice, and you can easily recreate like a naturalistic habitat when you have just a smaller space than, for example, like a huge ginormous place that you need to fill. For this habitat, I used a picture to kind of recreate it in more or less, and it was a habitat actually for a otter species. I believe it was the small clawed otter, or at least it was like a small otter species. And they also had this really beautiful habitat that was connected to a building that you could see in the background. And then they also had this little like stream that was coming somewhere from the back of the habitat, then flowing down like also this little stream, and then flowing in the front into a little pond. So that's why I did this with the pangolins. I know that the otter and the pangolin are not really like close or anything, but I still felt like this habitat was super beautiful, and I was thinking about saving this for an actual otter habitat. But I feel like with otter habitats you can do so much, and I still felt like this was super pretty, and I still wanted to recreate this. And I also tried to keep like the plants and stuff relatively similar, so they had like more on the back pretty like lush foliage, and I tried to do this with more like towards the corners of the habitat and close to the edge of the little pond, where there would like be a little bit of a pile of trees and bushes. And then for the rest of the habitat, I try to keep it as open as possible so that the animal can still traverse through there, but not super open, so that the animals can still feel safe. And since they are pretty tiny, they don't need like a lot of space for their traversable area. Also, the traversable area is pretty nice for this animal in this game. It's like a pretty old animal. I am not quite sure if it is a base game animal or maybe like a different, but it could really be a base game animal actually, now that I'm thinking about it, because I remember that I've also built for the Chinese pangolin way before my YouTube career and way before I had all those different DLCs. So it can really be that it is in base game animal, and for that the traversable area is really top notch. I almost did not have like any problems with the traversable area. I just had like some few little spots where there were like one or two pebbles just blocking the way of them, but now I just fixed that, and they can pretty much use all of this base of the habitat, and also they can freely move in and out to the indoor area, which is also really nice. So I can definitely enjoy this little animal and enjoy their little habitat, and it's also pretty functional, so that's also really nice. Now coming to the indoor area and also somewhat of like a winter residency for the Chinese pangolin, I at the beginning was like really indecisive on how exactly to create the interior of the indoor area. With the tapir and capybaras it was like relatively easy, and I just could not decide if I want to have the pangolins indoor area similar to the tapir and capybara part, or if I want to create it like in a different way or design it in a different way. So I did like multiple approaches actually, and now you'll see the like finished part. At the beginning I was like thinking about using the rock walls that I also did in the other area. Then later I covered the whole thing in like the faux rock to make it look a bit more like a cave, but I also did not enjoy that look. And then I went for a more of a bit realistic approach, and I was looking at different pictures on Pinterest, and I saw this one like indoor area for birds, I believe it was, or at least I could see some birds in the picture. And it was like relatively small, and they had this like backdrop of like just trees, and then they had a little bit of rocks and just some fallen logs and branches and stuff like that, and just a few small plants. And I really enjoyed that, and I thought, why not try to recreate that? So I was looking for a picture of like a forest from Nepal, because the Chinese pangolin also lives in Nepal, and I thought, why not? So I found this picture, and I thought it was so nice for having it as like a backdrop for the whole habitat, because it's just of like a continuous picture where you can just see just the forest, nothing fancy, no like a mountain in the back or something that would have looked really repetitive, since I had to use this picture multiple times to cover the whole wall. And with this you can almost not tell that this is like a really repetitive like picture. I believe I used it like 6 times for the whole habitat, and you can almost not tell. So that was like pretty much perfect. And then to just cover up the bottom, since the like screens that I used for this are not that long, they have like really weird sizing, to be honest, especially with the bigger ones. You have like 16 meters, which I used in here, I believe, or maybe I used 6 meters or 8, and then you get like 32 meters, and there's like nothing in between, where I thought like maybe I could have used something in between, but we don't have it, so I had to just use it multiple times. And then I just covered the like bottom of it with the rocks, and then to also make it look realistic and for the animals to have a little bit of a climbing, and to almost make it look like the foliage is coming out of the picture, I use the birch trees, like the naked version I would say, or broken down version, and they would be like in the floor and then connected to the top, so that they would hold in there, and it almost looks like the forest is coming out of the picture. And I really love this indoor area for them. I'm so in love with this, it came out so nice. And then I also use these little climbing like trees, so that the pangolins also have a little bit of a climbing feature in there. And then for the plants I just use like a few sapling trees, just a little bit of fern, grass, and that's almost it. There's like not that lot or not that much going on in there, but I feel like this is pretty much perfect. Sometimes I feel like I'm doing a little bit too much, but I'm also scared of doing too less, and I feel like with this one I pretty much hit like this sweet spot, and it's also perfectly traversable for the animals, so I really enjoy it. And just to give it more of like this forest look, I also decided to use the vines on top. And we are almost at the very end of this episode, and as always, let me know down in the comments what you think about this, and if you enjoyed the way I designed this, and if you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any more videos. And we are almost so close to hitting 800 subscribers on here, which is like so crazy for me. So if you are not yet subscribed to my channel, definitely consider to just push that little button down below to be part of this little community and to support me as a content creator. Now enjoy the last little cinematics of this habitat to see all the little intricate details with the finished habitat for the Chinese pangolin. And I'm also gonna say my goodbyes now, so I hope to see you in the next episode. Until then, bye guys!